Welcome to EP Daily. Today on the show, we talk about all things Nintendo in the rundown.
Plus, we continue the fight with a new look at Mortal Kombat X.
At your worst, sorcerer, you shall see my worst.
And then we find out how Angelina Jolie does behind the camera with a review of Unbroken.
Get out, boys. Get out!
Also coming up, we give you a review of the book Ready Player One, soon to be a movie from Steven Spielberg. Take a look back at Xenoblade Chronicles and much more today on EP Daily. Brought to you by EB Games. I'm your host, Victor Lucas, bringing you the latest in everything cool every single day. Prepare to get inked because it's time for the rundown. Nintendo fans have plenty of new things to play over the next few months. The Wii U exclusive Splatoon will squirt ink all over your living room on May 29th. The game is a team-based shooter, but with unique gameplay mechanics based around different colors of ink. The more of your team's color you spray over the map, the faster you'll be able to move and take over new territory. There's also a single-player campaign, and you can learn more about that by watching our interview on EPN.tv. Nintendo is also working on 3 new amiibo figures based on Splatoon, which will unlock extra in-game content. Over to another big Nintendo franchise, Mewtwo, widely considered the best and most awesome Pokemon, will finally join the Super Smash Bros. Roster on April 28th. Mewtwo will be available for the Wii U and 3DS versions of the game, complete with unique moves and combos. And best of all, Nintendo has confirmed that Mewtwo will also be getting an amiibo figure, although a release date has not been named. One of the most iconic franchises of all time might finally be warping back to the small screen. An all-new Star Trek TV show is rumored to be in the works. Latino Review reports that CBS is interested in creating a new series with X-Men director and Star Trek fan Bryan Singer producing alongside his frequent collaborator Christopher McQuarrie. The show, if it happens, would take place in the original Star Trek universe and not the rebooted universe that branched off in the J.J. Abrams films. Long before there were any Trek movies, the franchise started as a TV series, and there have been more than 700 episodes spanning 6 different shows. The last series, Star Trek Enterprise, went off the air back in 2005, so the airwaves are long overdue for new Trek.
Sounds promising.
All right, here to talk about some of this Star Trek information is the loveliest Klingon, Marissa Roberto.
I guess we could do like that, but I'm not familiar with the Klingon language. And then we have to do subtitles, and it's a whole thing. But
You excited about a Star Trek TV show?
I am, but then I always think of the actors that are in the original Star Trek TV show because I watch them on Netflix. It's a very comforting show to me.
For sure, yeah.
So I always wonder if they're hurt by a new Star Trek coming out. I don't know if that's something that they would be offended by. Especially with Shatner, he gets offended.
I think it's cool that they're going back to TV. I hope it happens because it's a show, it's a franchise that really makes sense on television. Yeah. And I know that Ronald D. Moore, who was a producer that worked on that show and then also Battlestar Galactica, has talked about the non-serialized nature of it. They can jump into all kinds of different plot points, and I think that's also true of the many derivations of the Star Trek franchise. So I think a new TV show would be great. I think it's time for some science fiction that isn't dystopian, that's about a possible great future for humanity, and Star Trek always represented that. So I do hope that comes back to television.
Always looking on the bright side.
And I hope that it's very intelligent as well. Yeah. Now, let's talk about Nintendo here. Okay. We've got Amiibo, should we call it the Amiibo Lanch?
Amiibo Lanch, it really is. Well, especially at your place, because you've got quite the collection going.
I can't stop. I've got a problem.
I know, and now you saw the new ones, obviously.
Well, I saw the new ones. I'm not a huge Pokemon person. I like the games, but I'm not that excited about Mewtwo. I'm excited about the Yarn Yoshi, though. That is ridiculous, so darn cute. I'm actually excited about the Splatoon characters, too, because I've played the game now. I went to an event that Nintendo put us up, and I've been skeptical about this thing. But this was actually a very, very cool game, and I think part of the uniqueness of it is jumping into the ink and using that mobility. Yeah. And it was super fun to play in multiplayer. And I like that Nintendo is investing so heavily in something new.
That's true, but we have to go to a story now.
Yes, we do.
Scott did Mortal Kombat X.
At your worst, sorcerer, you shall see my worst. Fight!
Mortal Kombat first debuted, I think it was in '92. And how do you make a Mortal Kombat game now that's still relevant to the people who were fans in the beginning?
Oh, one of the great things about Mortal Kombat is it has such a rich history. I mean, the franchise has been around for 20 years, and most of our fans have stuck around with us since the very beginning. Obviously, hardware changes, comes and goes. We started in the arcades, now we're on pretty much every system that's available to players in their homes, as well as mobile devices now. So it's fun to watch the series evolve and take things to an even greater presentation that the new hardware and new power allows us to.
You are surrounded. What will you do?
My father always spoke highly of you, Sub-Zero. He wants to talk.
Talking, always his first choice.
I want to talk about the thing that everybody cares about, the story. Tell me what's going on narratively in the game.
We've been doing this for the last couple games, but this time we've got an even bigger presentation than previous games. And you'll see this is the first time we've had a chance to actually move the Mortal Kombat narrative forward in a few years. So we've actually jumped 25 years in the future from our previous game, which gives us a chance to add new characters to the game, as well as catch up with some of the old fan favorites and see what they've been up to. But in terms of just some highlights, you'll see we've got a new Emperor of Outworld. We've got Kotal Khan, and he's actually trying to quell a rebellion from Molina. And our Earth Special Forces are sent in to investigate and figure out what's going on. So it's a pretty cool storyline. It's a huge component of the game. Hopefully many people will give it a chance to check it out when the game comes out.
From what I understand, the one guy in the game who I don't like at all, Johnny Cage, he's married now, and not only is he married, he has made a baby. Tell me about this new character.
Cassie Cage is one of our new combatants. She is the daughter of Johnny Cage and Sonya Blade, and you'll see a mix of both of their fight styles as well as their personalities come out in the character of their daughter Cassie.
What makes you our leader?
Tell me what else is new in the game.
So we've got a new online feature called the Living Towers, and this is pretty cool because this allows us to dynamically update the towers with new, fresh content whenever we choose. So they could be themed around holidays, they could be special events that last a day, an hour, a week, but it's new content coming into the game well after it's been launched. So it's a way to keep everything vibrant and new every time you come into the game.
So I've got a few fatalities that you may want to consider putting in the game. It'll probably make the sales go up. One is you put a bucket underneath a guy down there, and then you drain all the blood out of him, and then as he's now bloodless, then you drown him in that bucket.
You do not deserve to rejoin us.
What about another one where all of a sudden it just says finish him, and then kittens just pile on him and he just gets smothered by hundreds, maybe thousands of kittens? What about that one? Do you want my address so you can send me royalty check?
Don't know about you guys, but I'm living the dream.
Mortal Kombat X comes out next week.
I can't wait for that. Now stick around. When we come back, Marissa and Scott have a review of Angelina Jolie's Unbroken.
You keep going the way you're going, you'll end up on the street.
Welcome back to UP Daily. Angelina Jolie's latest directorial effort came out last year over Christmas.
Which means that you, like us, probably missed it in theaters.
Oh, well, it's out now on Blu-ray, so maybe we can cuddle up to it now?
Ew. Here's our review.
There was a movie that came out in theaters not too long ago called Unbroken, directed by Angelina Jolie. This is based on a true story, based on a true guy.
That's right, Louis Zamperini.
Louis Zamperini.
Italian name.
Totally. But he was a juvenile delinquent of sorts, and then his brother encouraged him to start running.
You keep going the way you're going, you'll end up on the street.
And he was actually one of the fastest guys in the world. And then guess what? World War II.
Yeah, he did go to World War II, and he started traveling the world where he continued to run, and also he continued to suffer on a totally epic scale.
Right, exactly. Because, I mean, I feel like we're telling you what happens in the story here, but this is really the main part of the story is when he ends up being on a raft in the middle of the ocean for 47 freaking days.
For about 500 hours of this damn movie.
Yeah, 47 days. So that's not even the last of it. Like, then he goes to
They go
you know
on a
what?
raft and they eat each other.
No, they don't eat each other. That's
They
different.
don't.
No.
I wish they would eat each other.
Okay, listen, the story is really interesting when you look at it from the fact that, you know what, this really happened to this guy. And I can't believe this happened. I can't believe that he survived this.
Get out, boys. Get out!
They're difficult movies to make where someone has gone through so many extraordinary things. To create a world that has a real sense of gravity and there's a real sense of credibility and things that are convincing, those things are hard to establish. And you can't help but think of infinitely better war films like Apocalypse Now, or I just watched The Deer Hunter again recently. And those are movies that really feel authentic and strange. And this is an unfortunate story, and there's a whole lot of suffering, and there's a whole lot of incredible things that happen here, but it feels a little too Disney-ish for my taste and comfort. And so it all kind of feels like it's shot in this very romantic light, all these romantic colors. Everybody just seems like they're acting. The writing's not very good. The acting is barely sufficient. And I walked away from this thing feeling kind of disappointed. I'm sorry that this guy went through all this stuff, but making his life story into a film, this is not the film that I think he deserves.
A moment of pain is worth a lifetime of glory. Remember that.
While I was watching the movie, it did get very boring. It was long. I didn't know when this man's suffering would end. It just really did seem endless.
It almost just seemed, I mean, I just had a hard time believing all of it. And again, I have no doubt that it's all true, but if you're gonna do a version of this guy's life story, I need someone to vouch for this thing and tell me that this is a real thing. There's nothing.
Louis did.
I know Louis vouched for it, you're right. But he just deserves better. His story deserves to be told with more conviction and more authenticity. And the movie had neither of those things.
I think it's really difficult taking on a challenge like this. It must be very difficult. Taking a man's story, his life story, and then condensing it into a movie at this length. So I applaud Angelina Jolie for what she's done here.
She's a terrible director. I don't like her directing. She hasn't made a good movie. Go back to acting, Angelina.
All right. Well, I didn't think it was as bad as you're saying it is.
Oh my God, Louis Zamperini deserves a much better film than this.
Sure, fine, great.
Much better.
I'm glad that I didn't go see this in theaters though, because I would have been really bored.
The Blu-ray of Unbroken, what are you gonna give it?
Gets a 6.
Gets a 4 from me.
Great man, great story, great book, and a terrible, terrible movie.
Okay, well this might cheer you up because book time is next.
Really?
Yeah, well you remember the news earlier about Steven Spielberg directing Ready Player One? Yeah, well Stephen Raju reviewed the book.
Oh, I love book talk.
We're at the Steam Whistle Brewery in downtown Toronto, and we're about to change things up.
Oh, do tell.
We're about to review a book, but video game nerds, pay attention. The book is called Ready Player One. It's by Ernest Cline, and it is a classic video game reference fest.
A reference fest.
It's a quest story set in 2044, where the richest man in the world has left a trail of breadcrumbs to his riches. Now, all these breadcrumbs are set in these sort of matrix-like world called the Oasis, and they all come from the things that he loved, which honestly were a lot of stuff that we loved growing up.
And if you're a fan of old school video games, you're a fan of movies like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Risky Business, War Games, basically any movie that was big in the 80s, any video game that was big in the 80s is somehow worked into this book. It's a fascinating way of tackling a future society with stuff that resonates with people who are, grew up in the 80s. Oasis is kind of like, it's like World of Warcraft meets Second Life meets PlayStation Home. It's a world where everybody lives in the form of an avatar, and because the real world is in such disarray and chaos, a lot of people spend a lot of time in the simulation. So the creator of Oasis has died, and he has said anybody who can discover 3 hidden keys and unlock 3 secret gates in the game will inherit Oasis, will inherit the company, which is worth $240 billion, and get all his riches.
The book is set up in a classic quest form. One of the first sort of challenges involves joust. Our main character, Wade, has to sort of take on a virtual avatar so he can get one of the keys. At another point, he has to do all of the famous quotes from Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Run away! Run away! Run away!
There's a sequence in the book, without giving too much away, where the character basically goes into the embodiment of a Dungeons & Dragons module, plays Joust against the boss, and then has to recreate the movie War Games. I mean, that's 1, 2, 3 hardcore nerd 1980s things in a row.
Shall we play a game?
I totally love this book. I'm gonna have to give it an 8.5.
I'm right there with you. 8.5 for Ready Player One.
Congratulations, Stephen Raju. You are the official book reviewers of the show.
I love readers. They're like old men wearing hip leather jackets and high-fiving one another. They're awesome.
Okay, back to games. After the break, Vic has a review of Evoland.
EP's mobile coverage is brought to you by Gameloft, makers of Dragon Mania Legends, which you can play for free right now. I have been playing an iOS RPG that has maybe one of the most clever concepts I've ever seen in any RPG anywhere. This is a game, very much like its title suggests, that takes us through the evolution of the role-playing genre. And it starts with a monochrome 8-bit game design where you can basically just go left or right, and then you find some magic chests, and the world expands, it gets much larger. Then you keep finding new chests, and all kinds of texture detail comes in, new monsters come in, new trapdoors, new weapons and new abilities start to come into play. And so this becomes a game of improving the game as you find and unlock all of these treasure chests along the way. And not in the sense that we've been trained to play RPGs in the past, but in the real sense of watching your game go from a very simplistic 8-bit monstrosity to a pretty elegant Final Fantasy 3D-like experience. And it's just really addictive and fun because you're constantly seeing the game change before your eyes. Really great stuff. Evoland gets a 9.5 out of 10 for me.
Another great review from Victor Lucas. And listen, we've had Xenoblade Chronicles before on the show. The next one, the 3D version, comes out next week. Let's take a look back at our original review. Here's the second coolest pair of guys on the show.
Xenoblade Chronicles, what do you think?
Well, the fans demanded it, and the fans got what they asked for. This game was big in Japan. Everybody was talking about this thing. Finally, we get a North American release.
A localized version of the game.
You know
Operation Rainforest success with this one.
This is the kind of game that makes me cringe right out of the gate. But you know what? I kept playing it. I rolled up my sleeves. I got in there. I mean, there's just a bunch of characters at the start of the game that I just don't really like. It doesn't make the greatest first impression. I'm not the biggest JRPG fan. So I'm a little lost at first. What about you?
It's a relentless game. It's so loaded with content, and there's so many sort of big revolutionary new additions to this genre in this game that we haven't really seen before. You can save anywhere. You can customize your character on the fly. The landscape and the worlds go on forever. It's a massive game. It's impressive, but it kind of has to barrel over you to kind of impress you a little bit. There's no subtlety about this huge game.
Let me tell you something. It is hard. It is very hard. In fact, I think it's impossible to go back to this kind of RPG after Mass Effect 3.
It's hard after that.
We've had such sophisticated storylines, such sophisticated dialogue.
I hope I can figure out the secret of his power one day. You will, Shult.
Characters that are so nuanced and subtle and conflicted and real and believable. And now we're back into the land of people with long hair and big swords and crazy outfits.
It's very fantastic. I like the giant creatures that are in this constant state of conflict.
The two titans are battling it out, and they just get so exhausted that eventually they just sort of clang together and they're connected, and you're actually traveling around on their bodies over the course of the game. I like that. Like, that really got my imagination going.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful game, but I agree it's really not at that same level of detail and refinement and fidelity that we see in something like Mass Effect. And the game that I kept thinking about while I was playing this, because the design is so tailor-made for MMORPG fans out there, is the Old Republic. But it doesn't feel anywhere near the sort of level of experience that you can get out of something like the Old Republic.
Yeah, and I also really appreciated the whole aggro system where one of the enemies who seems to be the most aggressive in your three-person party suddenly draws all the attacks to him, and you can just send your other guys behind the enemy and start doing all kinds of massive damage. I also like the fact that whenever any of your party members are about to get into trouble, when one of the huge boss-like characters is about to deliver a finishing blow, the Monado, which is the sword you're carrying throughout the game, suddenly will flash forward into the future and give you a glimpse of that character dying.
That was pretty cool.
So you can do something about it before it happens. This just didn't do it for me.
Didn't connect.
No.
The best thing I can say about this is that this is an endless amount of content for you to kind of dive into. It's like having an MMORPG that's single player and just as robust for the week.
I think if you're into this stuff, then you're gonna be into this. It's not for me.
I enjoyed it, but I don't think it's for me either. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. How about you?
6.
6 for me.
Another great review, guys, and in case you want to see everything in Xenoblade Chronicles coming at you in 3D, it comes out next week. Coming up after the break, it's the Twitter question of the day.
If you want more EP, go to our website, epn.tv, for bonus content and full episodes. We're also on Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back to EP Daily. It is time now for the best part of today's show. It is the Twitter question of the day. This one comes from Jordan Reimer. He is at Jord Reimer. He asks, do you fear the lack of creativity for the future as we continue to reboot old characters / series? Question mark. I know this is a big one.
It's a huge question.
We were just talking about this earlier with Star Trek.
Yes, we were. And Star Trek, I think, is going to be a bit of a different case because they'll probably create new characters and new missions under this huge umbrella franchise. That seems to be happening more and more, these sort of mega franchises with lots of little stories happening. I'm kind of split here, though, because I love new things, like Ori and the Blind Forest is an awesome current example. I love that. But I also love, you know, the Avengers, and I would like to see an amazing Avengers Age of Ultron video game, AAA, you know, Batman Arkham caliber game, and we're not going to get that.
Okay, I know. I'm of two minds of this as well. And even back to the Ori and the Blind Forest example that you're using, those guys did use examples or inspiration from other things they loved in their lives too. So I think borrowing from other things and then implementing them in your own game and using that as your own version of your own creativity, I think that's okay too. So
well, then there was also surprises like the 21 and 22 Jump Street movies, which were way better than you expected that they were going to be.
Right.
Big question. We'll talk about more. We'll talk about it more on our podcast, Vic's Basement, which you can watch, as well as full episodes of the show at epn.tv.
We've got more coming in an upcoming episode of EP Daily, including a trip to the black carpet of the season 5 premiere of Game of Thrones. Woo!
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
EP would like to thank its sponsors, Nintendo, Xbox.
The last time we saw Bran, you were leaving Tyrion high and dry. Kind of brought a tear to my eye a little bit. Are you gonna?
I didn't enjoy it. I mean, it wasn't easy to play that. It was a big thing for him to do. But if he was going to stay being a mercenary, he would have stuck with Tyrion.
What is it like getting to build this character in your own sort of style, give it your own little flair, and be the ultimate badass that you are?
It comes down to some really, really good writing by David Benioff and Dan Weiss. They've done all the hard work for you, and then when you walk on set with production values that are comparable to a Hollywood blockbuster, there's not a lot left to do. You just need to turn up and not forget your Valerian.